final here. You may have seen in the programming that we had Larry King to speak. Sorry to tell you that Larry had an accident and isn't in here, but we have an interesting replacement for him. His son, Chance, actually. Chance King is here to moderate the next panel, which is going to be a discussion about how this technology, blockchain technology and its like, can potentially help to build out essentially a new internet, one chain at a time. So, Chance, why don't you come out? We've got Stan Bharti and Christa Steele as well. Take it away. Thanks.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Chance King. I am here today filling in for my dad, Larry King, the iconic broadcaster. He really wanted me to come here today to tell you all how sorry he was he couldn't make it and how much he wished he could be here. And the reason me and my dad have got involved in this project is because we realize how serious and pressing the issue of climate change is. And that is what this panel is really geared about today, the health of our planet. Forests are burning, oceans are overflowing, and people are dying. And this issue has gone on too long, and it needs to be addressed. And we are going to be talking about today an avenue and a way in which it can be addressed, and that is gear. Now, a lot of technologies here today can really change the way the world works. Gear can save our world. And today, the man who will be moderating the panel and filling in for my dad is the amazing and widely successful entrepreneur, Brock Pierce. So let's give it up for Brock.
Well, I think we're doing this together as a team.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I guess hello again. Since we have a short panel, and I know everyone's tired, we'll try to get this going immediately. New internet. Let's start there. Why do we need a new internet? What's wrong with the existing one?
All right, I'll kick us off.
Yeah, whoever wishes to start.
Well, I think that in this new digital age, that digital is taking us there whether we need it or not, right? I mean, that's where we're at today. And I think that it's a digital melting pot where everything is coming together. We have artificial intelligence. We have big data, predictive analytics, the use of sensor technology, blockchain, machine learning. We must look at it as, as one, as when we look at our digital strategy versus just looking at things standalone, just blockchain standalone or just AI standalone.
And governance probably has some role in all of this as well. And where do these new technologies and governance, how does that play a part in all of this?
Well, that's really important. I serve on corporate boards, so I'm looking at all of this innovation from a governance perspective. I serve on public and private company boards. And so things like data privacy, data access, data management is mission critical in making sure that we understand all of this, how it's going to be protected along the way.
Yeah, so
along with coming up with consensus with how things should be regulated and how things should operate and function.
Yeah, so some of the other features of this new internet, are things like immutability, right? Transparency. So how will this new internet, how will these technologies, what industries is this likely to affect, and in what way? What are the positive impacts that this new internet will have, call it on businesses or us as consumers?
We live in a hyper-transparent environment where everything is readily accessible, and I don't think that there's any industry that's not going to be impacted by this. I've evaluated different industry verticals for blockchain investment, and I don't see an industry that doesn't have potential to use it.
Well, let's talk about, I don't think climate change is an industry per se, but clearly something that affects all of us.
All of us.
And not just all of us that are here today, but our children and our children's children. And it might be worth just kind of taking a second to,
Sure.
hear your kind of, what's the state of the world? Call it the state of the union right now, the state of the climate.
Yeah, so sure, let me give you, so my name once more is Stan Bharti, and I run a merchant bank called Forbes in Manhattan. We've been in business for 30 years. We operate in 40 countries around the world. We invest in resources and technologies and blockchain. And one of the most critical missions, I think, of the next decade is going to be climate change, and specifically reduction of greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases is nothing more than a ton of carbon dioxide that's in the air that causes warm temperature. And there's only two ways to reduce greenhouse gases. One is reduce emissions, and the other is plant more trees. And the third is, of course, eat less beef. And let me give you some idea of the numbers. So just to give you some background, 78% of the greenhouse gases are emitted by the West, which is Western Europe, North America. The Amazon single-handedly reduces 5% of the world's greenhouse gases. 5%. It's the largest single independent ecosystem in the world that sucks up so much of the carbon and gives us so much of the oxygen, okay? Now, here's the challenge. 100 years ago, the world was 1.5 billion people. Today, we're 7. And by 2050, we'll be 10 billion people. Never in the last 10,000 years of our civilization have we seen such fast growth. And so part of the issue of greenhouse gases is we want to eat well, we want to have lots of meat, we use plastic every day. I was just counting today the bottles of plastic water, just in that one room we drank. Must have been 200 bottles. You multiply that by 200,000 rooms in Las Vegas, multiply that by 365 days, multiply that by 5,000 cities, you can see the math. So how do we deal with it? Now, the other key thing to mention here is that the generation that will make the change, that has really made me conscious, I'm sure Brock conscious, everybody else, is what we call Generation Z. The millennials were primarily these people that were born from 1995 to 2013, some of who cannot even vote. But they are passionate about climate change, and we as parents, as sisters, as brothers, have got to deal with it. The best example was, of course, you saw the movement about 3 months ago in all the major cities in Canada, in the US, in Europe. Everyone left school on Fridays, and actually as schools got closed. This movement was started by a Swedish young lady called Greta Thunberg. She's 16, and it went viral all over the world. And the message from these people that cannot vote as yet, was, we want to see effective change. So then a corporation like ours that's, we spend hundreds of millions, billions of dollars around the world, how do we help? How do we help that? So we created a company called GEAR, which stands for Green Energy and Renewables. And it's the first world's app that is being created that will allow each individual Generation Z person to do two things. One is they can raise money through crowdfunding. That means I have a passionate project, I need $5,000, $10,000, you have a platform. The second thing is this app will allow you to count your own carbon credits and losses. If you're riding a bike, you get some credits. If you're putting solar panels, you get some credits. If you're burning diesel, if you're driving a Ferrari, you get negative credits. So you're keeping a track for your own system. And the third thing is a platform worldwide that will allow blockchain trading of carbon credits. Because one of the blessings of blockchain has been you cannot cheat. Because carbon credits really came into play in 2006, 2007, but it's a very opaque system. You could say, I got this carbon credit, I got that, the trading prices don't match, government's trying to figure out how much to charge. If you burn more than you're allocated, if you have a factory, you burn 100 tons of carbon credits, you should only allot 80, what do you charge you for the other 20? So we've created the world's first stock exchange digital platform using blockchain. First of all, you cannot lie about your carbon credits. Secondly, you can trade them openly. So to me, this is one of the first and most important phases for Generation Z with which we want to start. So it's a high-level approach to what we want to do with climate change.
Well, I mean, one of the things I love about the conversation that is being had here is it's not just about, call it dollars and cents, not just, in search of return on investment, but return on impact. And so I live in Puerto Rico, and food security is the thing that keeps me up at night. Over 90% of the food in Puerto Rico consumed today is imported. The Dominican Republic, a neighboring island, is a net exporter of food. And so food security keeps me up because there's only 2 to 3 weeks of food on the island. God forbid another major hurricane hits, or as today, earthquakes, something that disrupts the island and disrupts the supply chains is a very, very serious concern of mine. There's only 2 to 3 weeks of food. Christa, I know these are a couple of areas of focus for you, and so I'd love to just see, how is this new internet potentially going to affect someone like me, a resident of Puerto Rico, from an agricultural perspective and a logistical perspective?
Sure.
How can I sleep better at night?
I also, as you mentioned that, I was thinking about Chipotle. Remember when they had the outbreak with the contamination of the chicken? They lost $6 billion in market cap in a single day. They had to shut down different locations. With blockchain technology, they could have traced the chicken back to the coop and prevented that outbreak. And even if they would have had contamination in one specific location, they could have contained it to that one location and not had $6 billion in market cap lost in a single day. So as I look at Puerto Rico, and by the way, I serve on a board in San Juan, Puerto Rico, which I love Puerto Rico, but food safety is a major issue. I serve on the largest lettuce producer in the United States on their board of directors. And I was blown away when I went and I like to go out and kick the tires if I'm going to work with a company. And I asked to go take a tour. And I went out and right into the field. I ate a piece of celery right out of the field while it was being cut, chopped, packaged, stuck on the tram to be shipped in, to be iced and stuck in cold storage. And each section of an acre, down to the section, down to the picker, is timestamp dated, censored, controlled lettuce, for instance. You can trace it back to a specific section on that acre at that time of day it was picked, the weather conditions, the picker that picked it, what type of box it went into, what vehicle it was transported in, inside of the cold storage when they packed it with the ice, what area of the cold storage it's in, how long it sits in the cold storage, all the way to when it gets on a truck to be transported to the distributor, to the distribution center, and then into the retailer eventually. Walmart is one of our largest customers, and we have been feeding information into the Walmart blockchain for the last 10 years. We just think about blockchain as a new term, but in reality, it's a process, right? I mean, blockchain is called blockchain right now, but it's been in formation for some time. It's just like artificial intelligence has been around since the 50s. It's not something new, it's just evolutionized itself. So from a traceability, from a quality control perspective, it solves a lot so that you can make sure that once it gets to your mouth, it's safe for you to eat.
Well, yeah, thank you for that great answer, and also that Chipotle reminder, I guess, to any business owners or managers, that really puts it into perspective, the direct benefit of being able to isolate your problem and to contain that contaminant.
Right. I want to say one more thing, because a lot of people hear the word blockchain and they'll go to a lot of conferences and they'll hear about it, and you still walk out and go, what is blockchain? I want you to just simplify it. Just think about a manufacturing facility, Toyota, putting together a car in the assembly line. That car, each assembly stage is a block in the blockchain. The end product is the digital asset, i.e. currency, a car, a piece of real estate. It can be whatever asset you're tracking along the way. Now think about it. If you put that into an Excel spreadsheet, you put it into the cloud, and you let that information be available to your supply chain. That's what this has the power to do. So it eliminates redundancies, so your operating efficiencies skyrocket. And that's why we're seeing a huge adaptation now at large corporations, which are really going to move the needle and force people onto the supply chain, Walmart being one of them.
If I can add on food security, again, going back to the fact that we're going from 7 billion to 10 billion people. I happened to be in Qatar when, if you remember, was it a year and a half ago, when there was some political issues in Saudi Arabia and some of the other countries, they blocked Qatar. Within 3 days, there was no food. No food in the stores. They couldn't fly it in. Because the air routes were closed over Saudi Arabia, it was real panic. So food security is a big issue as we go to 10 billion people. And let me give you some example of how important it is. The largest exporter of agricultural products today in the world is Brazil, by far. And the largest amount of arable land left in the world is in Brazil. About 40% of the food we buy. And so food security is very important from Brazil. And linking it back to the environment, one of the key things that we do in Brazil, because we also invest in there, is we have fertilizers. And by providing fertilizers, we can reuse the land and not damage the environment. But there's no question, food security, what you're talking about, Puerto Rico, is a huge issue. Because, you imagine countries like China buys $22 billion of soybeans from Brazil every year. And so any products you look at, the soybeans are in there, any products you look at. So the issue of food security and Christa, like you said, tying it to blockchain is very important. We haven't done it in food, but we did that in another company I was involved with to do with emeralds. So every emerald that we produce now, we tag it with blockchain. So you know from the beginning where the emerald came from, what country, what place, what work done it. It's tagged all the way. So when you buy that emerald, Christa, you will know that it was a pure, clean emerald that came from this specific area. So the whole issue of blockchain, it's really revolutionized, like you say, the way we do business. And food security is a big part of it.
It's really going to make us rethink how we do business, because blockchain is, you have to gather data in order, or usually, depending on the type of blockchain that you're setting up, but there's data aggregation, there's information that you're collecting, right? Because you're going to build an algorithm, you could use it to predict things. And so it really is tying to an overarching theme of collection of data. The use of sensors is huge in agriculture, pertaining to where blockchain is going, because that's part of being able to track something, international shipments going across international waters, being able to, there's a big push right now, like if you have cherries that you're shipping from California to China, oftentimes when it gets to China, it'll get to the port and there'll be a dispute over, well, that wasn't the cherries that it took a picture of when you said they shipped it to me. So now now you can verify those were the cherries that were shipped to you, because you can trace them and track them all the way to the end where they get delivered.
And Mr. Chairman, we also have a special surprise here that I hope you'll indulge us to announce. We have, behind in the scenes, one of the largest influencers on TikTok, 11 million followers. This young man, Generation Z, is 17 years old. And I didn't know, I know TikTok, but I didn't have it until today. So today we have it. And this young man is here, so I'm going to have him come up to the stage, and we've got a special announcement to make. Coming up here, Josh. This is Josh Richards, by the way. Yeah. And we've agreed, as part of our climate change mission, and as part of GEAR, to give there's 3 people that have agreed to contribute $5,000 each, and he's going to pick 3 videos on TikTok that have to do with climate change and impact. Brock has kindly donated $5,000. I have, and we have another sponsor here. Alex, come on up here. This is the third, our richest sponsor. You should be giving $10,000, not 5. So Alex, come on up here. So, but please say a few words about what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Josh Richards. Nice to meet everybody. I'm a social media influencer. I've been doing it for 3.5 years now. And for someone that is a Gen Z themselves and is passionate about climate change and making a difference, I feel that I have a responsibility to share that with the followers I've been blessed with. So he kind of summed it up, but the idea is to make a challenge on TikTok that's going to get a lot of these younger kids talking about climate change and thinking about what they can do just in their own home to make a difference. If that's turning off the lights, if that's riding a bike to school instead of driving, whatever it is, it's just one little thing that's going to make a change. So I'm going to be picking 3 winners, people that I think really put in a lot of care or put in a lot of thought into how they're going to make a difference, and they will be given $5,000. So yeah, $5,000 each. There'll be 3 people each given $5,000. So I would like to have Brock, Stan, and Alex stand up with me while we make the
Christa
video. Yeah.
Come on in here.
Come on in,
This
lads.
is your
Everybody
stage
come in.
right now.
Of course. We're going to guilt her into.
Do we, are we just, okay, so I'm going to turn this sideways.
All right.
Here we go. Let's.
All right, make sure everyone gets in the video. Awesome.
We're in.
All right, hi guys. Oh, let me make this a 60-second
And
video.
so
to be safe.
you're learning from one of the world's leading influencers right now. So if you're curious about your future social media strategy, watch and learn.
Here it is, here it is. Hey everyone, I'm here with billionaire and philanthropist Stan and Brock and as well Alex. And we are going to be giving away $5,000 to 3 winners who create a video talking about how they are going to save the environment. Use hashtag gear. You want to say the hashtag?
Hashtag gear impact, guys.
Hashtag gear impact and global warning. So make sure you guys all throw in those hashtags. I want to see your videos. I'm going to be handpicking them myself. Can't wait to see them. Good luck.
And can I say one other thing? You kids will change the world.
Let's change the world. Perfect. Hey,
There we go.
thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Good job.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for your contribution, Brock.
Hey, yeah, well, happy to support. I live my life in service, and opportunities to engage the youth, in the issues of tomorrow is, I mean, how am I going to say no to that? I'm giving all my money away for the most part anyway, so yeah, I'm a sucker for these things because I believe it matters. But on that same note, climate change. You talked briefly about how gear can impact climate change in terms of carbon offsets. Would love to I guess to get an understanding from your perspective of why carbon offsetting hasn't been making that impact, and how from an incubation perspective the work that you're doing with gear, where blockchain and the new internet meets, how are you going to be upgrading those systems in a way where hopefully we start to see the much needed impact in the world?
The biggest culprit is fossil fuels, as we know. Okay, even today, about 40% of U.S. energy comes from coal. In India, it's like 80%. China, it's 70%, 60%. So fossil fuels definitely are a big culprit. And over the years, it has not been as important because the world population was growing at 1-2% a century. Now we're growing 1-2% a year. People are living longer, they're healthier, and they also want to be more sanitary. So energy is the driving force. And in spite of all the efforts, solar technology, wind technology, these have really not, they're making very good progress. But by 2050, when we're at 10 billion people, I don't know if these technologies will be able to provide reliable, good energy at an efficient cost. So the answer is to reduce greenhouse gases. I mean, after fossil fuels, the biggest factor is beef, right? One cow grazes on 1 hectare, 2.5 acres of land per year. So, people say, why do in poor countries, why do people burn the trees down? Because they need more land. They're poor, living on sustenance. The answer is to use fertilizers and replenish the same land over and over again. That's the answer. So it's a big issue, and I think ultimately this goal of electric cars 2030 is a very, very achievable goal if as a world, as a group, as a government, we can get together. And I think Chris is absolutely right that the blockchain technology will help us to measure that this is a good goal and a right goal.
And you mentioned the planting of trees as well. When we discussed this earlier, does Gear have a focus, an initiative, or a thought on how you can impact, call it planting seeds?
We're not doing it through Gear, but through Forbes and Manhattan. We have very big initiatives in many countries where we basically plant trees. And the best way, because for example, if you take the Amazon, if you go and plant bamboo trees there, it's going to destroy the Amazon. The Amazon ecosystem is very sophisticated, very detailed. So you got to find the University of Sao Paulo, which is in Brazil, one of the largest universities in the world, has been studying the Amazon ecosystem for hundreds of years, okay? And to give you a longer point of view, one of the gurus in the understanding the Amazon is a guy called Gerard Moss. Gerard Moss is Swiss, married to a Brazilian girl, moved to Brazil, and he was the first guy to fly in a glider around the world, first of all. But secondly, he studied the Amazon. And why is the Amazon so important? To give you an idea, it drops the temperature of the earth by 1 degree Celsius, which is huge for global warming. Secondly, what it does is when the trade winds come from Africa, the Amazon has so much moisture that rises up. These trade winds capture that moisture, and it flies at thousands of miles an hour at about 4,000 feet, billions of gallons of water in the air, hits the Andes, if you know your geography. The Andes are 8,000 to 9,000 feet high, can't go over, and floods the plains of southern Brazil. And that's why Brazil is so fertilized. But the Amazon feeds, what I'm saying is all the system. So the role of these trees is critical. And so if everyone could plant 1 tree a day, that's 7 billion trees a day. Think of it.
One thing that I like to say is I apologize. Been talking with Stan about gear, and I kind of introduced it, not exactly what we were going to be speaking about today. But for you three, we're talking about Gen Zers, and we're the future. What would you recommend someone who doesn't know anything about cryptocurrency or the whole blockchain system? How would they go about learning and how to invest and how to learn about how everything really works?
Well, to go to my website and get educated. I've got quite a bit on there for, it's like I'm not a technologist by background, so I look at things in a very simplified way of just how do I practically apply this technology. So that's the approach I come from. As far as how to look at it from an investment perspective, be very careful, is what I would say. This is well, we were talking earlier, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You have to pick your horse right, because in any type of startup industry, it's the burn rate, right? You hear the term burn. So you have to make sure that if you invest in that company, that your investment is going to survive the burn, which is how long those funds are going to last until they have to go out and do another raise. And a lot of these companies they get stalled along the way because there's a disconnect between having a great idea and being able to practically apply it into an existing business infrastructure. So you've got to understand and make sure that whatever that technology initiative is, that it's not just a great idea, but that it's actually something that somebody wants on the other end of it. Because you can't really look at it and say, well, what's the ROI? This isn't an area where you can really see a return on investment yet. You see the potential, but you don't know exactly how you're going to get there. So it's a long-term hold. It's play money. That's how you have to look at it.
These guys have made a lot of money, so they're the guys who'd be telling you the secrets. Both of these guys.
Well, yeah, a lot of projects burn out.
Yes.
But from an investment perspective, since you've been so gracious, Alex, too, and for those that don't know, legend in the world of technology, one of the pioneers behind voice over IP, which has changed the world of telephony. Similarly, working on money over internet protocols and creating the financial sort of instruments that we're used to, but in the world of cryptocurrencies, specifically the ability to lend out your currency and to collect yield on an asset that you're not necessarily using. And that's something that matters to most of us. We like bonds, things of that nature. It might be worth a moment because this is a big deal that the industry has evolved into being able to, we now have more sophisticated financial products than we have in the first 10 years.
I think that works.
Just say it, I think you can hear me. So I have 6 kids at home, and ranging from 21 years old down to 4 and a half. And I can assure you one thing, none of them want to get my gold coins or my stocks or my bonds. They don't believe in any of that. They definitely don't want a bank account. So the question is, what are we building for that generation? What are we giving that generation? And so when 30 or 40 trillion dollars worth of wealth is going to move from old people like me and other people on the stage to the young people, they're not going to take it in that form. They're going to move it to something that they are comfortable with. And most of them have tokens on games. They have all kind of other digital assets. So for them, just another digital asset, if it's a stable coin or if it's a Bitcoin or Ethereum, looks much more familiar, much more friendly than a stock, a bond, or an IOU from the US government. So what we need to do is deliver for them the value and the assets that they need in their environment that they can use day to day. If any of you visited China and saw how 1 billion people are transacting with each other through Alipay and so on, right? No one there has any physical currency and no one is using credit cards. And that's the future. We are about 10 years behind. So part of what we're trying to do with enabling the next generation to transact with digital currencies, with the blockchain, is hide all the technology and just give them something that they can use every day to make a better future. And again, a future in which we don't print trillion-dollar deficits in hopes that somebody's going to pay it down the line or start wars. I don't know if you heard, Iran just bombed our bases in Iraq. You know, that's going to cost the U.S. government thousands of lives and trillions of dollars in a fight that I'm not sure we need to take.
Well, so we're now at the end of the panel. This panel has been full of surprises. Obviously, Larry, instead of Larry, we got Larry's son, Chance. You get to get me twice today. TikTok, social media, influencers, and prizes out there inspiring the youth to figure out how to make the world a better place. We just ended the last decade. This is the end of the first week of a new decade. And so to close off this panel, would love to just hear from each of the panelists one thought relevant to the new internet and this next 10 years, a goal, a dream, an ambition, a thought that you wish to close out this panel, that hopefully inspires us for this decade to come.
Well, listen, from my point of view, I'm an engineer. I started in the 70s, and the growth I've seen in technology from about 1995 to today has been unbelievable, unbelievable. And I think the fact that social media, communications, the internet has helped a lot. So I think this decade we will find some big answers. I think one of the biggest things in my mind is going to also be outer space. It's going to be huge. It's going to be one of the biggest things. So this is a very exciting decade. And I think, don't forget the other thing, the Generation Z will start voting. They'll all turn 19 and they'll start voting. When they start voting, the priorities they have been very different to my generation and perhaps Christa's and Brock's. So get ready for that. There'll be big political shifts. Well, like Alex says, Generation Z doesn't want war. So you'll see a bigger, much smaller push towards war and a much bigger push towards a saner, calmer lifestyle.
So sounds like Gen Z is the answer there. We're counting on you. Christa, any last comments, thoughts, dreams, inspirations?
Stay hungry for knowledge, stay current, stay relevant. The next 10 years are going to be mind-blowing.
All right. Well, thank you. Chance.